Whenever you see a bunch of bullets flying around, the adrenaline's gonna spike and chaos is always gonna erupt. From slick shootouts to all-out warfare, there's nothing like a well-executed gunfight to crank a movie into overdrive. On that note, let's check out the top 30 gunfights in the movies. One thing's for sure, you shouldn't mess with a bunch of nobodies, otherwise they'll make you a part of a final shootout where you don't come out on top. The final shootout in Nobody is like Home Alone, but if Kevin McAllister grew up salty, brought a bunch of guns, and had Bob Odenkirk's resting dad face. It's an explosive showdown in a warehouse where Hutch Mansell turns to his John Wick alter ego by rigging up defenses, outsmarting goons, and casually racking up a body count with brutal efficiency. It starts off with a car chase too, so it's got all the essential ingredients for a classic moment. Yeah, bro is helped out by Larry and David because there's only so much you can do against a whole mob, but bragging rights remain with Hutch as he found a unique way to get rid of Julian.
Oh, shit. Not without incident. I'm coming.
At number 28, we've got Patrick Bateman, John Preston giving us everything. The not without incident shootout in Equilibrium is kinda like The Matrix, went to shooting school and came back even deadlier, although with certain gaps in logic and physics. Having said that, it's the kind of moment that makes you want to put on a trench coat and practice your poses in the mirror like a true American psycho. Anyway, Christian Bale's character casually walks into a room full of armed guards and proceeds to dismantle every single one of them without hesitation. Bro was moving almost as if he was a ballerina with a major in firing guns. What makes it even better is the build-up, because you're expecting a struggle or maybe even a tense standoff. However, our boy drops bodies like NBA YoungBoy drops albums. Who could have ever thought that Professor X would go rogue? Well, it's from his earlier days when James McAvoy chose to do Wanted, so it's nice to see a complete change in demeanor from an otherwise polished personality. Of course, this is the same dude who did Split, so it's not like we shouldn't expect anything less from him. Wesley Gibson goes completely berserk in this extremely excessive display of violence. But he also uses his big brain energy by distracting his targets with explosive mice. It gave him the perfect cue to steal the show, and even though his final opponent was a bit tough to take down, our man does reign supreme by the end of it. So I guess this is what happens when you finally quit your 9-to-5 job, eh? When the name of your movie is called Shoot 'em Up, the least you gotta do is stick to the brand image it's trying to maintain. Am I right? No worries though, because Clive Owen's character Smith does his film true justice in this ridiculous encounter. Look, even I'd be ready to risk it all for Monica Bellucci, but come on, the man has a freaking baby in his arm and he still takes out an entire goon squad like it's a tea party. How can anyone even compete with that? The action sequences are definitely over the top, and I sincerely request everyone not to try this at home. Most definitely not with a child in your arms. Paul Giamatti was an essential part of this film, and his character Hurt summed it up quite well when he asked if the or if Smith was really that good.
My God, do we really? Or is this guy really that good? Come on, boy!
You got a gun? Get out of here, man. Get out of here. On this.
Of all the possible outcomes in this movie, the final shootout was a hefty way to crash out for sure. Taxi Driver is a raw, grimy, and about as far from Hollywood polish as you can get, which is why I consider it to be Martin Scorsese's best film ever, which I know is a big statement. Here, Travis Bickle, who's now got a mohawk and several mental issues, storms into a sleazy brothel like a one-man wrecking crew, and he goes to town like there's no tomorrow. We don't see anything fancy, it's just brutal and bloody chaos that feels real in a way most action scenes don't even dare to be. The silence at the end, with Travis sitting there bloodied and completely broken, it sent a chill down my spine. All of this was his idea of being a protector, but all he did was push himself further down the abyss. Yeah, it's as if The Punisher was directed by a philosopher with a cigarette and a passion for cinematic nihilism.
No bullets. Stupid Hans.
You were saying?
Leave it to a movie like Die Hard to make The Office look fun. That is, of course, if your definition of fun involves crazy gunfights. What I really enjoy about this movie is how gritty and ruthless the fights between John McClane and Hans Gruber are. The moment one sees an opportunity to gain the upper hand, he seizes it without hesitation. It's not just brute force either, but rather a constant mental chess match. Both John and Hans display a sharp sense of strategy and quick thinking.
Shoot the glass.
Which makes the fight feel more intense and intelligent. Like here, Hans tells his guy to shoot the glass, which was a smart move to gain one up on McClane. Of course, our hero was up to the task, and he countered well enough to make his escape.
Holy shit. Who are these guys?
It's kind of funny that a movie called True Romance would be all about chaos and betrayal by the time you reach the end of it. Now look, this scene does have your typical betrayal moment thanks to Elliot, but I really want to talk about Tom Sizemore, who gives us an Oscar-level performance. Bro shot a civilian for throwing a coffee on another civilian and then played Tornado while getting blasted 30 times. This is the kind of dedication you need from your actors, otherwise, why are you even paying them? The cast is quite solid with folks like Brad Pitt, Patricia Arquette, Gary Oldman and Christopher Walken in it, but this rampaging, ugly shootout is what takes the cake for me. Of course, the whole thing could have been avoided, but remember, that Quentin Tarantino wrote the screenplay, so there's no way he was going to let us get off without a shootout and excessive violence. Apparently, no place is safe when it comes to action movies, not even a freaking tea house. I'm glad I chose to put in at least one Asian film on today's list, because shootouts are quite common across Hollywood films. Chow Yun-fat is called Inspector Tequila in 1992's Hardboiled, and it's about right if you consider just how messy his journey gets as he dives deeper into the undercover world of policing. Anyway, this shootout was brilliant to watch and has some key highlights. The way Bro falls over that table with the gunshots is one of the single coolest things I've ever seen in any action movie. That staircase slide too was super badass to watch. And it makes me wonder if I should try expanding my palette in Asian cop films. Let me know if you've got any suggestions in the comments. After years of Leonardo DiCaprio being a slave owner, we can finally see that all's not well in Candyland, and rightfully so. Calvin Candy is easily one of the greatest cameo appearances of all time, and his death, as impactful as it was, is actually followed by the movie's greatest shootout. We lose Dr. Schultz as well, which was a bit of a bummer, but Django makes up for it with a super hectic sequence. Of course, the action was great and all, but I totally loved how Calvin looked personally offended when he got shot. It was super appropriate for his character, and kudos to Leonardo DiCaprio for hijacking the shootout scene despite only having a couple of seconds of involvement.
I told you. Bring me everyone. What do you mean everyone?
If you're dealing with Leon the Professional, even a SWAT team's definitely going to have to do better than whatever the heck they're doing here. I mean, you're up against the typical middle to older age anti-hero who now has a purpose in the form of someone important to protect, which always happens to be a little girl. If you hope to beat a dude like that, then you're going to need God's divine intervention to show the way. Anyway, Leon versus the SWATs was entertaining because for the longest time, they had no idea they were going to be turned into a bunch of dead laughing stocks. Timing is everything in this sequence, and Jean Reno's acting on top of all this was perfect icing on the cake. At number 16, we've got ourselves a nicely drawn out finale from 1997's Copland. Now, you may not have heard of this film, but with a cast that includes Sylvester Stallone, Harvey Keitel, Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, and the T-1000 himself, Robert Patrick, you should really get your hands on a physical or digital copy. What makes this final shootout so unforgettable isn't just the bullets, but also how the entire thing is told through Freddy's eyes and ears. By this point, bro's barely hanging on, and his hearing has practically gone. The film pulls us into his world and makes us feel every step of his final stand. It's gritty, grounded, and raw as guns get jammed, people drop after a single shot, and yes, there's that pump action shotgun too, which isn't all as smooth as the movies usually make it seem. What made a real impact on me was when Figgis returned to save Freddy, which eventually led to the iconic line, "I can't hear you, Ray." Yeah, they really don't make movies like this anymore.
I can't hear you, Ray.
For some reason, when it comes to favourite places for a shootout in a Hollywood film, it always happens to be in a bar. In my opinion, if John Woo and a mariachi band ever had a fever dream together, it'd probably look a lot like the bar shootout in Desperado. Yeah, I know that's an odd combo, but it works as can be seen here. Antonio Banderas oozes aura as El Mariachi, strolling in with a guitar case full of trouble. Before we know it, the bar turns into a ballistic display of slow-motion flips, dual-wielded pistols, and of course, flying bodies. It's not just a shootout, but rather a gun-fueled tango with a pinch of tequila on the side. Robert Rodriguez directs like a kid let loose in a toy store, which kind of explains why he and Quentin Tarantino get along so well. Also, El Mariachi fights like bros auditioning to be the Latin version of John Wick, you know, minus the puppy trauma. If I could describe this sequence in one line, it'd be a shootout that'd air on Looney Tunes if it wasn't for kids. At number 14, we have a chaotic finale from 1969's The Wild Bunch. The final shootout, aka the Battle of Bloody Porch, is Western mayhem at its finest. When Pike and his gang walk into that Mexican compound, they sure as heck know that they're not walking out. But they go anyway, like true cowboys. It's gritty, brutal, and decades ahead of its time. As a matter of fact, you can even think of it like the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones, but with more revolvers and less betrayal. Sam Peckinpah totally redefined Western violence here, and he made this scene a sort of blueprint for every Last Stand shootout that followed.
Come on, you lazy.
You the one killed our friend?
That's right. I shot the boy too, and I enjoyed it.
As was with the previous entry, it's safe to say that westerns never disappoint. Open Range has one of the finest western gunfights ever portrayed on screen. I mean, it's actually ahead of The Wild Bunch too, as it's executed with exceptional attention to detail. Kevin Costner puts in everything as he delivers a masterfully extended showdown that leans heavily into realism. Like, you've got firearms running out of ammunition quickly, jamming, and even the characters miss shots from a distance. This grounded depiction adds intensity and authenticity to the scene. Also, if you look beyond the action, the gunfight carries a deeper moral conflict as it explores the classic theme of right versus wrong. But seriously, the sequence skillfully blends realistic combat with emotional and ethical complexity, elevating the moment beyond your typical Sunday shootout. So yeah, it's a gunfight that stands out for both its technical execution and its moral implications. Do whatever you want, but you just can't keep Arnold Schwarzenegger out of the action. This man was born to flex muscles and dominate action movies, further proof of which is presented in the adrenaline-pumping shootout sequence from 1985's Commando. This was peak Arnold to me. It was the perfect blend of over-the-top action, tongue-in-cheek humor, and just enough self-awareness to make it fun without losing its edge. Everything was a little exaggerated and kind of ridiculous, but it worked well because it was Arnold. He had the screen presence and physicality to sell every outrageous moment, and even when it's a scenario as ridiculous as this one. Bro took down a mini army all by himself, but this was the standard for the 80s. It was the golden era of action movies where style, muscle, and badassery came together in the most entertaining way possible.
Devastation. This was like shooting fish.
Guns and battles go hand in hand, and here they lead to a very joyous firefight. Now, from the movie Boondock Saints, I must say that the firefight scene stands out for its distinct approach to gunfights.
Cross. So that means one of our shooters dropped to his knees.
While its director Troy Duffy may borrow a lot of stylistic elements from Quentin Tarantino, it doesn't take away from the strength of this sequence. It might be overly directed, at least in my opinion, but there's an undeniable charm in its exaggerated, almost campy execution. Whether that campiness is deliberate or not, one thing's for sure, which is that it adds to the overall appeal. The visual style and the way the action is framed create a unique sense of coolness and energy that's quite rare to see nowadays. The interplay of different plot threads also adds depth, giving the sequence a dynamic feel. It's a moment that captures attention and showcases what the director is capable of when everything clicks. Unfortunately for Bro, this level of quality isn't maintained throughout the rest of the film. I'm not trying to be a hater here. I put this at 11, didn't I?
There was a firefight!
das Geräusch meiner Walter, die direkt auf ihre Hoden gerichtet ist.
Ich habe eine Pistole auf ihre Eier gerichtet, seit sie hier sitzen. Und ab jetzt sind wir zu dritt.
Stupid. Say auf Wiedersehen to your Nazi box.
Who would have thought that so much violence would happen, all because of a wrong signal? The bar shootout in Inglourious Basterds is a masterclass in tension that explodes into total chaos in the blink of an eye, which is why it's the perfect entry to start off the top 10. What starts as a quiet, anxiety-inducing conversation over drinks and accents quickly spirals into a deadly standoff. Quentin Tarantino builds the pressure in such a way that you almost forget you're watching a war movie. That is, of course, until the guns come out and everyone starts dying within seconds. Yes, it's messy, brutal, and it's over in a flash. You can practically feel the fuse burning the whole time, and all it took was one wrong gesture to kick it off. Sometimes life presents you with odd choices, like either catching a train or catching some bullets. Now, the train station shootout in the Untouchables is pure cinematic gold, which is just as tense as it is chaotic. Mr. Brian De Palma milks every ounce of suspense from that stairwell scene, and it's so ludicrous that a baby carriage is slowly tumbling down the steps like it's its own action movie, which it is. Meanwhile, Kevin Costner as Elliot Ness and Andy Garcia as Stone Cold sharpshooter George hold the line in a gunfight that's as much about timing as it is about aim. Every shot fired feels earned, and every second gets stretched for maximum intensity. This sequence blends the classic gangster grit with flair, making it one of the most unforgettable sequences in 80s cinema.
Take him.
2.
It's not dramatic to say that Rambo is the king of the jungle, and even if you doubted these words, then I suggest you take a look at this scene and then get back to me. Sylvester Stallone may not have made this with the same perfection that he used to create the Rocky franchise, but the film, and this shootout in particular, allow the viewers to transcend to elite carnage. Yeah, I know that's an oxymoron, but legends are always exempt from such definitions. This is also one of the only movies I've seen which shows the real effects of a .50 caliber bullet on a human body. It's actually the core highlight of the scene, apart from perhaps the very gruesome 200+ body count. It's a lengthy scene for sure, but the way it's shot and put together makes us forget there's even such a thing as time. Rambo might be a legacy level film, but in this case Arnie happens to be a touch better than Sly Stallone. After all, he's in a much better movie as well. No shade to Rambo, but Predator was a revolutionary film that completely changed the way people in the industry looked at action films. Now, this particular sequence may not include the titular Predator, but it does have a whole bunch of guns and an extremely lengthy exchange of firepower. Dutch and his men show us that they're a lot more than just some muscle bros as they force their way through the guerrilla camp. There's a lot of damage, and even though it doesn't look as tough for our heroes, we're still treated to an adrenaline-fueled delight. But what I enjoyed the most from this gunfight was Arnold Schwarzenegger with his cheesy one-liners. I swear that man is secretly a comedian hidden beneath all of those biceps and chest muscles.
Knock, knock.
Put our guns down and let's settle this conversation.
Joe, if you kill that man, you die next. Repeat, if you kill that man, you die next. Don't make me do this.
Larry, stop pointing that gun at my dad!
Reservoir Dogs was Quentin Tarantino announcing himself on the big stage, and considering it was his directorial debut, it really couldn't have gone any better. The Mexican standoff sequence in the finale was pretty much the cinematic equivalent of a trust fall gone horribly wrong.
What are you talking about?
That lump of shit's working with the LAPD. I don't have the slightest idea what you're talking about.
Tensions were quite high already, with everyone suspecting an imposter among us, so it was no surprise that you could cut the tension with a rusty butter knife. Tarantino showed his mastery in full flow as we witnessed pure chaos wrapped in slow burn brilliance, with Mr. White defending Mr. Orange like a ride or die bro.
He's a good kid. I understand you're hot, you're super pissed. We're all real emotional. I know this man, he wouldn't do that.
Joe gets convinced he's been double-crossed, and nice guy Eddie's just trying to keep up. And, as is typical in Tarantino movies, it's less about who's right and more about how everyone dies in a blaze of shooting glory. Think of it like The Office's finger gun standoff scene, but with real consequences and less Dwight Schrute. Nobody walks out clean, and that's exactly what makes it unforgettable. It's not just a shootout, it's like Hans Zimmer giving us a symphony of suspicion and paranoia, but in the form of a movie scene.
Don't do it! Drop the gun, man! Don't drop the gun! Drop the gun! I'm gonna throw you away! Okay. Do you wanna play rough? Say hello to my little friend! Huh? You want more?
Man, Tony Montana sure loves introducing his little friend, doesn't he? The grand finale of Scarface was packed with action, guns, and most importantly, the death of one of cinema's most iconic gangsters. Al Pacino acted his heart out, and it shows. It was almost as if Bro's rent was due, but we knew that couldn't be the case because he was fresh off The Godfather's tremendous success. Coming back to the scene now, Brian De Palma does a great job of highlighting chaos and then subverting everything once Montana brings out his massive unit, which tons of film analysts have pointed out to be symbolic of something that I can't really expand on here. Regardless, the impact he creates in this shootout is legendary, and then to have him killed so abruptly was probably the most on-point aspect of a movie that focuses on such a volatile lifestyle.
Be a lot easier with that.
Two can dig a lot quicker than one.
Yes, this is easily the most intense stare down you'll ever watch in your life. Clint Eastwood made a name for himself with these types of movies, and considering this is the most popular of the Dollars trilogy films, it's safe to say that this sequence is a certified classic. You've got Blondie, aka the man with no name, getting into a Mexican standoff with Tuco and Angel Eyes in a thrilling sequence where all the men do nothing but just stare at each other. Yeah, you heard that right. These bros spend so much time just looking at each other with anticipation, and yet this sequence doesn't seem boring at all. Sure, the movie's from 1966, an era that never had the internet, but this is still a highly captivating scene. With Angel Eyes eventually biting the dust and Tuco learning that he had been sabotaged, we got a highly satisfying conclusion to the whole encounter.
Oh!
And yes, at number 1, we're ending with a super classic from Michael Mann's Heat. What makes this scene stand out as one of the most creative shootouts ever filmed, and also the topper for this video? Well, for starters, the sound design is raw and completely unfiltered. Yes, I did mention this in my earlier videos, but if you don't know about those bone-rattling props from the AK triggers, they're 100% real. Yeah, there's no sound editing or cinematic polish used here. It's this unrelenting authenticity which gives this scene an intensity you can feel in your chest. It's these small, grounded details that elevate it from a typical action moment to something truly unforgettable. As a matter of fact, the scene was so influential that Christopher Nolan drew direct inspiration from it when crafting the chaotic opening of The Dark Knight. Oh, and one more thing. This shootout was executed with such precision that the US Marines have actually used it as a training reference. I'm not joking. From what I've read, this sequence demonstrates exactly how to retreat under fire and when to reload during combat. So yeah, when a movie scene becomes a Hollywood inspiration and a military reference, you know it's something beyond special. Hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video that I know you're going to enjoy.